We're live. I always get so excited. No matter how many times we do it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Legal Lounge. I am Ashley, like Ashy Knees, the Fair Housing and Education Outreach Coordinator for Legal Services, and my cousin.
Katie Stanley, Legal Services of Eastern Michigan Fair Housing Education Manager.
Ah, and we are excited to get into this conversation on addressing barriers to housing. So, with us today, we have some phenomenal guests. Who do we have? Who do we have? I love this part. I get so excited because I know it's going to happen. I know you're going to pop up on screen, but I'm always so excited when it happens. Look at that, and they're rolling in. So, of course, I hope you know by now. Our first question is we want to know who is here with us today. So, if each of you, in any order, could introduce yourselves. What's your name? What organization are you representing? And what is one superpower that you have? Anyone can start.
And Greg, if you're talking, you got on mute still.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Greg Abler. I am the housing law attorney at the Center for Civil Justice in Flint, Michigan. Um, I think the question is what superpower? I think if invisibility, I think that would be cool. Either that or the ability to slow down time. I think either one of those two I'd take.
I love it. So Greg, if you could say you had a superpower now, what would you say your superpower is?
Oh, if I have one now?
Uh-huh.
Oh, geez. I'm going to have to defer on that one because I don't think I have any. I'm just a normal
I can speak
person.
to that and say Greg is an amazing advocate. He works upstairs at CCJ, and your superpower is definitely how much you care about the community.
Well, thank you, Katie. And I do care about the community.
How about you, Debra?
Hi, my name is Debra Hayes, the Executive Director of My Brother's Keeper, and my superpower would be to care about the community as well and to try to move things forward and end homelessness in Genesee County.
I love it. That's true too. We've done a lot of work with Deb over the years, and she's always an incredible advocate in the community. And we're so excited to have her today. How about you, Theresa?
I'm attorney Theresa Haruska. I am the attorney and case coordinator for the Flint Genesee Homeless Court project. And my superpower is, I would suppose, knowledge, because I know enough about enough to try and figure out where to go next. So I'm very lucky that after 29 years, I've got some resources that I can tap into that make myself unique to these sorts of cases where we're dealing with the homelessness and removing those barriers.
I love that. We're so glad that you're in that position. And Essence, how about you? We got you last. What's your superpower and where are you coming to us from?
I'm Essence Wilson, and I'm the co-founder and chief strategy officer at Communities First, Inc. And I also wear a volunteer hat as the chair of the Flint Genesee County Continuum of Care. And I would say that my superpower is assimilating large amounts of information and opposing viewpoints towards a strategy.
Ooh, that's a good one. You could have been a good lawyer too. We use that skill a lot. Well, all right, guys, I guess we're going to just jump right in here. And before we get started, I think some of these questions, a lot of times acronyms get thrown around. And for everyone that's watching at home, we want to give them kind of a baseline understanding of what we're talking about today. So our first couple of questions, we were hoping someone could tell us just what is a Housing Choice Voucher program and who is eligible for the first question?
Well, I could take a crack at that. So the Housing Choice Voucher program is one of the most significant subsidized housing programs that is administered nationwide by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And the voucher program is really effective because for those who are income eligible for entry into the program, they get a piece of paper. It's a voucher. It's a thing that they hold in their hand. And with that voucher, they can go out into the private market and rent a safe and sanitary home for their family. And generally speaking, under this Housing Choice Voucher program, a family is going to pay somewhere in the ballpark of roughly 30% of their monthly gross income in rent, and then HUD is going to pick up the rest of the amount. So one of the most attractive features of the Housing Choice Voucher program is the voucher is portable. With that voucher, you can go anywhere in the United States to rent a home, and that's sort of in recognition that families' needs change, their jobs may change, and so this portability aspect of the voucher program is probably one of the most attractive features, and that's why it's so popular.
Oh, thank you, Greg. Now, Deborah, I feel like you wanted to add something there. Was there something you wanted to share as well?
I just wanted to let the community know it's better known as a Section 8 voucher.
Deb, so glad you said that. There are often a lot of names for things, and it can get really confusing, right? And especially now where there's so much increased housing instability, I think it's more important than ever that folks know what's available to them and what resources are there to help safety net our community during this time.
Now, what is another acronym? PHA. I hope someone's writing this down and putting it in a key. But a public housing authority, and how do they work with the HCV, Housing Choice Voucher? And that's for anyone. I just don't know.
I guess I'll take a crack at this as well. No.
Essence.
Oh, Essence, go right ahead, Essence.
Please, Greg,
Don't be
ahead.
shy, y'all.
Well, I was just going to say that a public housing authority is typically the entity that issues the voucher or rental assistance. So that could be the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. It could also be Flint Housing Commission. And they're the ones who issue those vouchers, oversee those programs, do the monitoring and compliance for them, and are often the entry point through an application process.
So say if I'm someone then that is eligible and I want to apply, how do I do that here in this service area? And is there currently a wait list? I know recently it got opened just briefly a couple of times. Is there anything you can share around that?
Yeah, you can apply through your local public housing agency office. But as I said, the voucher program is so popular that they're hard to come by. I know that MISHDA, their waiting list isn't even open. And if you take a look around at other local PHAs, you're probably going to find the same thing, that you can't even get on a waiting list right now. So yeah, they're just a limited commodity. So you do have to check your local PHA's office, and HUD does publish a list of those offices on their website.
That makes me wonder, not a question that I'm asking. It just makes me wonder. I'm like, I wonder if that varies by area, right? If there's like as much of a wait list in other areas, and if you kind of have to think about where it is that maybe the list might be open when you're determining how it is you might get on the list. Random thoughts. Won't ask that question. But the question that I will ask, though, is can PHA, so public housing authorities, assuming you are able to get to an application process, can they deny admission into public housing due to criminal convictions? And if so, what types of convictions?
Well, the short answer is yes. And as far as criminal convictions go, there are two cardinal sins of subsidized housing, whether you're talking about the Housing Choice Voucher program or public housing. There's really two cardinal sins in terms of criminal activity or convictions. One is meth manufacturing. If you have a conviction for meth manufacturing on federally assisted premises at any time in your life, whether it was last year or 25 years ago, that is a permanent lifetime ban from the voucher program or public housing. And the other cardinal sin is going to be a lifetime a requirement that you register on a sex offender list for a lifetime in any state. That will forever prohibit you from entry to subsidized housing. So those are the two main criminal convictions, but we also have to keep in mind that it's not just convictions. There could be certain classes of criminal activity that the PHA has a reasonable suspicion that you have engaged in or are engaging in that could prevent you from getting into the voucher program or public housing.
What constitutes, and I open this up to anyone who might have the insight here, right? What I wonder constitutes a reasonable suspicion. And before that, Debra, was there anything you wanted to add there? I keep feeling okay. Okay. Yeah. So then tagging this question on, right? What constitutes a reasonable suspicion? I'm curious. Oh, Greg, you're muted.
I'm sorry. The federal regulations are really vague on that, and they don't really provide any guidance to the PHA. But generally speaking, a reasonable suspicion, what it can't be, just the fact that somebody was arrested for a particular crime, that's not enough. But what a PHA can do is they can look at a arrest report, and they can look at witness statements and sort of weigh those. And so really it's the federal regulations are asking these PHAs to use your best honest judgment in terms of arriving to that sort of suspicion. But it's very difficult because it does give them a tremendous amount of discretion.
Yeah, and I'll just share a couple of things. As was previously said, the waiting lists are not always open. And so when they are open, it is imperative that if a person meets the qualifications and they need that assistance, that they jump on top of it, because the waiting list can close for years at a time. And then I'll also say that when it comes to the requirements and being approved, someone can be approved for the Housing Choice Voucher, but then they can be denied by a landlord. And it could also be because of criminal background and a variety of other things. So just something to keep in mind, that a person can have a voucher that pays for their housing, but then have trouble or difficulty finding someone who will accept that voucher.
In some communities, this is a great point at which we can say as a Fair Housing Center that some communities have what's called source of income discrimination protection, and that would cover those folks. So they couldn't discriminate on renting to you based on the income you're going to use to pay rent. Now, Genesee County does not have that, but there are other surrounding counties that do. So if you're encountering that, let us know. Maybe it's something that we can assist you with. And Greg, did you have something to add there?
I was going to add, Katie, I do believe that there is either a Senate bill or a House bill that has been introduced. Yeah.
Yes, so the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness, I believe, has been working on that for quite a while. So hopefully that's something that we can keep up to date on, and it's something that we can let our viewers know if that comes about. But for now, it's piecemeal, so it kind of depends on where you're at. And small plug for we just this year built a fair housing application that hopefully is going to have all that data for folks. So when they move from one community to the next, they'll be able to see which protections they have going from, say, if you were moving from Flint to Ann Arbor, you could see Ann Arbor has source of income protection and Flint doesn't, and those kinds of nuances around porting your voucher, which is already a really complicated system to navigate and has a really long wait list depending on where you are. Like Essence was saying, I've seen it at years around the state. So I guess this is a great point to ask the next few questions. The first one being, if someone is denied, which we see a lot at legal services, or something happens where their voucher's lost, is there something they can do to appeal that? And I say here, legal services, we can help as an agency across our 14 counties. But for those folks that are just wondering, can someone answer what's that look like? What's the appeal process look like? And can they appeal? Envisioning that it's not one of the lifetime ban situations that you guys just mentioned.
Yeah, so I would be reluctant to call it an appeal, because when we think about appeals, we think about a very structured process with very rigid rules where the rules of evidence apply. What an applicant who has been denied admission is entitled to under these federal regulations is a informal review or an informal hearing, depending on the program. And so it's a very low level standard of review without a whole lot of protections. But it is an opportunity for a applicant who has been denied to perhaps disabuse or to correct basic mistakes that the PHA has made in their decision. So for example, if they base it off a criminal conviction that never happened, that does not apply to this person, that's their opportunity to go to a hearing and submit their own evidence and their own testimony as to why the PHA was wrong. So it is only a review, and the federal regulations specifically call it an informal review. So it's a very, and by and large, PHAs are free to come up with their own procedures in terms of how they handle these reviews.
Okay. So I guess what I would ask now is, what are some other barriers you see to housing? And I think the very cool part of all the contributors we have in our conversation today, I think you all have some diverse perspectives on what those barriers might be. And I'm interested to hear some of those different perspectives. So maybe if we could start with, I'm looking at Theresa and work our way around to anyone who might want to contribute. What are some other barriers to housing that you're seeing?
I became involved in the Flint Genesee Homeless Court program mainly because it is designed so that you have a live warrant. Our goal is to get rid of that live warrant, because if you have a bench warrant for your arrest, you immediately are going to have an issue with your application for any sort of housing. And so when we have our shelters in Flint and in the county, someone goes there, if they have a live warrant, that needs to be taken care of first before you can even do the other things. And so our program is designed for misdemeanor warrants, child support warrants, where there's a failure to pay. You owe court costs, fines, you owe child support and fees. We have a great group of stakeholders in this community, from judges to court staff to prosecutors, city attorney, friend of the court, all the way through DHHS. And what we've done through the program is all come together to figure out how to lift people up and take care of this issue. So COVID has made things a little more challenging, but at this point, that's a big thing for taking care of, at least our community, is taking care of warrants.
And Theresa, I have to jump in before we move on to our other panelists and say that that is so true for our clients. And I think one thing to mention now with the new expungement law that's just come into effect, that might be something that could be helpful to them. And then for me, I was just wondering, I know CCJ and our COC, our local COC, did so much work to get this homeless court up and running. What does someone have to do if they're involved in court? Do they have to make a request for that? I know that's not in our questions, but it occurred to me that someone may not know how they can even become a part of that.
And here's
And
the thing.
Teresa, we got a comment just in responding. Pardon me, but there's some muffle in your microphone. So
Okay.
maybe to see if there's maybe something covering it.
Maybe if I get closer, is this better?
I think that helps a tad bit. Let's try it. Okay. Thank you, Teresa.
So, in answering your question, Katie, it is at this point referrals. I receive communication from other stakeholders, such as Ms. Hayes and my brother's keeper, or from service providers, Hope Network, Genesee Health Systems, and they will contact me in regards to we have this issue. Uh, my client is doing this, this, and this to correct situations. Would he qualify to have the warrant basically for the monies cleared? And so we start that process basically with me. Referrals come from shelters, service providers. We have MDHHS working closely with us. And they go in as well into the shelters and they figure out who needs what, and they're part of our group too. And so we're trying to hit the ground running on at least alleviating that particular. I found during COVID, the biggest question that I've gotten though in the last 6 months since we've kind of started is, expunging records. And I have an hour every Friday that I take it's solely for homeless court issues. And anyone who is providing services to someone who is homeless can get a hold of me. We can discuss things, try and figure out, number one is there a live warrant? And number two, if it's not a live warrant, what are the other things within our community that we can do to alleviate it? And so everyone has been fantastic in the community wanting to make sure that this happens. And it's just a matter of getting the word out, in my opinion, as to taking care of, going forward and having the program working. Judge Gwynn is volunteering his time. Judge Gwynn from 67th District Court is going to be presiding over these cases. And basically, if someone's following, requirements for taking care of themselves, following community rules, doing community service, doing community activities. As simple as, and I know this doesn't sound the best, but if you can follow the rules at one of the shelters, which is kind of demanding because you have to rein in your behaviors and show you can do these things. Simply by doing that, you're making yourself eligible for our program if you have a live warrant. And the big one I think in our community is child support too. That is something I don't think anyone realizes we're doing through our homeless court project.
Got it. So it sounds like a barrier when we talk about addressing those barriers to housing and kind of how we got here. You talked about warrants and specifically the homeless court program and being able to be a solution to those barriers in terms of helping with the warrants. Is there anyone else who would like to support or to offer any insight or input as to the question of what are other barriers you see to housing?
So I would, and I know it's a question on the panel, but identification, birth certificates, having those vital documents. Some people may not know this, but if you don't have a birth certificate, or if you don't have a valid ID or Social Security, that's a major barrier to housing. You will not get in the door. So we try to prevent that, and I'll wait on the next question.
I'll also say, sort of going back to the denial conversation, when it comes to a denial by a property management agency that receives federal funds, they typically will issue an actual denial letter. And so it's important for people to read it and understand it. If they don't understand it, then they should seek out someone who can assist them with understanding it, because it will identify the specific reason why that denial occurred. And that gives a person an opportunity to address whatever that issue or concern is, because it's probably going to show up at other locations. And then it also will detail the appeal process. And that appeal process often gives them the opportunity to dispute the decision, to submit a letter of appeal in writing. And that's something that people really should do, because oftentimes those appeals are effective, and it allows that person to state their case and provide letters of support, or a case manager that's been working with them for a length of time to address whatever is being seen, or even if they're engaging in homeless court or whatever other resources they're taking advantage of. Those all go a long way to helping a property manager who is really only seeing the criminal background check and seeing their application documents and possibly their credit report, and that's all they have to go on. So it really humanizes the situation if they are able to, follow up with that appeal letter. And then I would also say another barrier would be, oftentimes we're working with transient populations, and not having an actual address that they can receive mail at is a huge barrier. And so we work with people who get a Housing Choice Voucher, or there's some other voucher programs, but oftentimes, even if the person is experiencing homelessness, those documents are mailed to whatever address was put on their application. And so I always tell applicants, be sure to put down whatever address you need to put down that will help get your mail to you. And if it changes, call the management agency that handles those, the PHA, whoever it might be, and update that contact information so that you can receive it. We've seen a ton of people miss out on housing because we could not locate them.
Mhm.
Yeah, and this is a great point at which to say a few comments about what you said, Essence, that it could be the case that if someone does have a voucher and they're going somewhere to try to utilize that voucher and they're denied for a criminal record, that could very well be a fair housing violation, in the sense that if it's overly broad or a blanket ban on, say, all of one certain type of crime, and they're not taking it on a case-by-case basis or looking at it from the perspective of how long has it been, what type of crime is it, that could have a disparate impact on a protected class. And for us as a fair housing center, I wanted to say that as well for folks. And then the second thing is that in our community, although we do cover 14 counties, there are a lot of agencies that will provide folks that don't have a someplace where they can get mail, a PO box. So somewhere like G-Card, I know, used to provide this service in Flint. So it might be worthwhile talking with whoever you're working with, your caseworker that's helping you through this process, to say, hey, is there somewhere I can get mail? Because I know that there are organizations that offer that. And then before, I guess I have to direct this question to Debra. I just have to, because when I was drafting the questions, I just pictured Debra when I was writing this one.
Okay.
For those that don't know, Debra always does our veterans fairs and all the things that she does in the community with veterans. And for you, what do you see? Are there any special considerations or resources available to that population or veterans experiencing housing instability? Or what do you see there, Debra?
So yes, so veterans, we have the project-based vouchers for the veterans. We have the HUD fast vouchers for the veterans. We have incredible case management from the VA for the veterans, peer-to-peer, just so many things for the veterans that I see that's not for the general population of homelessness. And I talk about it all the time. It literally takes us about 45 days to bring a veteran out of homelessness in Genesee County, especially now during COVID, where there's so many extra opportunities coming in for funding, as well as vouchers coming to Genesee County. So, and it takes us sometimes years to house a homeless person that don't have those wraparound services. And so it's all into making sure that veteran is receiving sustainable housing, affordable sustainable housing. And so those are the things that, and then ID, the free ID came from Senator Brand, they were opposing a bill for SB 404 is the homeless ID bill. So they were opposing that bill for veterans, and we as a community with with Micah and 4 other counties, it was Oakland, Genesee, Macomb, and I believe Kalamazoo, maybe. So anyway, we partnered together and met, had many meetings in Lansing with the senators and the legislators in Lansing, and we formed these questions, and they jumped on this because they thought, you know what, we're doing it for the veteran, but the homeless population needs this as well. So they formed this, and now we have a statewide free ID for homeless populations and veterans. So there's so many things that have been done, and it's important that we not look at Genesee County alone, but we collaborate with the other counties in our surrounding area, that because we're all serving Michigan, and it's just beautiful when something happens in Oakland County or Genesee County or Macomb, and now it's spread all the way up to the thumb, and everyone is benefiting from the work of a few people. And that's what I would like to see, the collaborations and everyone joining, because we're all in the same boat. And then we all have the same goal, and that's to end homelessness. And I can tell you, from when I started this in 2015, and it's 2021 now, I have seen a great turnaround in Genesee County. I can actually sleep at night. I'm smiling. Still a lot of fight to go, but we're doing it. We're doing it, and we go into the boardroom and fight and come out and smile. So I can't say enough about the services for the veterans, can't say enough about the opportunities arising for the veterans, the case management at My Brother's Keeper. What we do to the veterans when they walk in the door, we want to make sure that, and this is not just for the veterans, that they're document ready. You can't get housing without your documents, your vital documents, your ID. You want to make sure all of those things that we think are small, but they're not small. Sometimes you have to build a case, get school records to get a person just a photo ID. So they came up with using the HMIS IDs, and I know this is going into another conversation, but this really stemmed from the veterans, getting services for the veterans. So I'm grateful to be a part of that team, and I'm grateful to know that we can make a difference if we collaborate and join together.
You speaking my language. You said collaborate, and my spirit perked up. You said team, and I said she's talking to me. I really got excited over here. And then I thank you for adding on those additional barriers, right? You added on, Theresa talked about warrants, but then you've just added on IDs, identification, right? Like if we don't have IDs, if we don't have an address, that's an entirely new barrier. So thank you for that. Another question that I have to add on is, what is the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and how does it protect renters? What is the Fair Housing Credit Reporting Act, and how does it protect renters?
The Fair Credit Reporting Act, man, I love the statute. This is a federal statute. It's a federal consumer protection statute. And what it does is it requires a credit reporting agency an agency who collects data and compiles reports and sells them to third parties who make credit decisions. It requires these credit reporting agencies to ensure that the information that they're receiving and compiling is accurate. It's a really cool statute because it's a statute that comes with teeth. And it also applies to these so-called tenant background reporting agencies. these companies who compile this data for use by landlords who are assessing prospective tenants. They must comply with this federal statute. And like I said, it's a very cool and effective statute because it does demand that the information that's compiled and sent out to these third parties is accurate. And like I said, it comes with teeth. It comes with enforcement provisions. The Federal Trade Commission can enforce these provisions and sue these tenant background reporting companies for willful or even negligent violations of the statute. But it also allows the consumer to file a private cause of action to get damages. And not just damages, but in cases where the violation was willful, punitive damages. And to add on to that, if the consumer wins, they get their attorney fees. So it's a very comprehensive and complex federal statute, but it's very effective in making these credit reporting agencies.
It sounds complex.
It's very.
Okay. Now, on the other side, right? What if my tenant, I'm a landlord, what if my tenant's background check has inaccurate information in it? Then what?
Well, the starting point is going to be for the tenant to dispute that information, either with whoever furnished the information to the tenant background company, or directly with the credit reporting agency. And that's a pretty effective tool, because once the tenant or really any consumer who disputes inaccurate information, that sets into motion very strict requirements on the reporting agency's part. They have got to do. Go ahead.
So, Pen, because I'm not a lawyer and you're taking me down a whole series of things that are making me want to ask questions. I'm not going to ask them all, but I am going to ask, how do I, tenant, renter, know who furnished the information? So I want to dispute it. You said I have to figure out who furnished it. How do I know who furnished it? And what's, like, in layman's terms, how can someone like me who is not familiar with legal terms at all figure out who furnished it and where to go to file my complaint?
So can I start that one? And I just would say that in that denial letter, if somebody were to receive one, it should identify what agency was used to make the determination, and have their contact information, and have it outlined how to contact them, how to file a dispute, and also how to get a copy of their credit report.
Yeah. That's what I needed. That simplifies it a lot for me. Thank you very much. Was anyone else going to jump in there in the response there? That she made it clear. Okay. Next question then. What if I don't have a state ID or birth certificate? So how can someone who's experiencing housing instability obtain a state ID or birth certificate? And are these needed to apply for housing assistance? And I know we've kind of started to talk about some of these things, but again, for people like me or people not like me who also needed to be super clear, right? How would one go about doing that in a tangible way?
So I can take that question. I'll be happy to take that question. So a person experiencing homelessness, or a person that needs an ID. So first of all, I don't know if you can see this, but the Secretary of State have 4 requirements that you must have to get an ID. First of all, you must have Social Security card. If you don't have a Social Security card, you have to have a letter of ineligibility to get past that. Then you have to have a legal presence. identity verification, and proof of Michigan residency. So what happens when a person in our community, and I'm speaking of the homeless community now, they don't have all of these things, as you know, because they're transient people, and they may have a social security card left at grandma's house. Grandma may have moved, so the document moved with her. So they don't know how to obtain those documents. So what we do as an organization or agency, we train our case managers to look for those documents, as I spoke earlier, upon entry to the shelter, and that's a part of the intake. So you notice that. And the other part that I want to just put this in, it's a data issue if you don't have all of those pertinent documents, like your social security card or your birth certificate. You're going to get flagged in HMIS for those things as well. So what we would do is begin the process. Sometimes we have to get, like I said before, school records to get some of these documents. But a person experiencing homelessness, we would work with that person to collect those documents, however we have to do this. And I'm just going to talk about a case that my hardest case, and the reason that I joined the ID task force. It was a blind man came to our shelter. He didn't have anything. He didn't have an ID. He didn't have a birth certificate. He was blind. He didn't have family. So what we had to do was literally put his life back together by obtaining these documents. We went to the school, we got his school record, and then we realized his name wasn't what he called himself now. The reason being is he worked in this community, went to school in this community under one name, but when he was 6 years old, his mom got married to someone else who adopted him. But his adoption papers never made it from Genesee County to his birth state, which means that when I was looking for his records, I was hitting a brick wall and couldn't understand why. It was after we worked with the county clerks and the Board of Commissioners to bring the free birth certificates to Genesee County, is when we discovered that this person's birth records had never met, his adoption records had never matched with were never matched with his birth records. So sometimes getting an ID can take months because you have to get these documents, and you can't get past these social security card, a birth certificate, not just a birth certificate with a raised seal on it. So, and you can't get past an ID, a photo ID of who you are. So any school records, any school card that you have with your photo ID on it, those are important documents. Whether we say, oh, I'm in college now, I don't need this, some kind of way, keep those documents. You never know what's going to happen. But to put a person's life back together, it's not easy, but it's so worth it. And this person now he was blind when he came to us. He can see, and he's moving into his apartment soon. So yeah.
That's incredible. I think I remember you talking about this case when it was starting, and it was a long time ago. I mean,
It
you've been
was a
working on
long,
that a while.
yes,
Well, okay, so now I have a follow-up question for you since you've told
please.
us this wonderful story. What if someone's not in your shelter? You kind of already answered this, but if someone can't get their state ID or their birth certificate and they're not in shelter, should they go to a shelter to do that, or where should they go?
If they are homeless, and we can see pretty much anyone for birth certificates, especially parents who trying to get their kids in school. A mom with 5 kids, she can't pay for that. So Genesee County Board of Commissioners and the county clerk's office have a form that all the shelters should have this form, and they can fill this form out, take it down to Leslie at the Genesee County clerk's office, and come back with a free ID. And most of the time, she will walk it down to you outside especially during COVID. You don't even have to go into the building. She'll bring it right out to you, providing you have all of these documents that you can present to her. And that letter saying that you came from a shelter, you have no ability to pay. If you can pay something $1, $2, that's good. But if you have no ability to pay, then you don't have to pay. So anyone, and we encourage that if you have a client that you're struggling getting the ID or the birth certificate, please send them to my brother's keeper. We have a case manager who's awesome. I'm here. I have a network of friends that I can call and get things done in a nanosecond. And truly, I can do that because this is what we do.
It's true, and I can attest to that. Debra is a mover and a shaker, and she will make things happen. She's not messing around. So we've put it out there. If you're having this issue, Debra wants to see you, and shout out to the clerk's office too for all the work they're doing.
Absolutely.
You know what, Debra, and too, I hate to do this to you, but I'm getting another question about when you were talking earlier. Someone was wondering, can you share a little bit more about resources from the VA? And then before you get into that, I wanted to say quickly, we did get a new grant at Legal Services last year that is veteran specific. So if you're a veteran that's experiencing legal issues, make sure you get with Legal Services if you're in our service area, because we do have some specialized resources available for that community now. And so, Debra, can you share with us a little bit about what the VA might offer?
I can share that, but what I would like to do, if it's okay with this panel, I would like to introduce my VA case manager, and I brought him in just for this question. Hussein, would you come over and answer this question, please?
Yeah, I don't have to.
Yay.
Yeah.
If
Hussein, I love Hussein.
Yeah,
I don't
he's a
have to
great
know
guy.
everything. I just need
Yep.
some phenomenal
okay,
people on
keep
my
on him.
team.
I'm going to have to fire him. You women, come on, Hussein, please.
What am I answering?
The veterans services, and what kind of services do we have for the veterans, and what do you do? Tell them what you do.
Oh, I do everything.
He does. We've seen it in action.
Yes, yes, we do.
Specific VA resources.
Yes, please.
I
VA,
don't
or
know
you
where
can
to
speak
start.
on like VA or specific veteran resources. But
Specific veteran resources. The veterans have, like she was saying earlier, it's way easier to house a veteran than it is to house like a non-veteran. I'll just say that. They have we have veterans lease up program in the community. We have OSHA that'll pay security deposit and rent for like 9 months. They subsidize their rent. They have to pay a portion. We got the VSO. They help us out a lot. We have the HUD Voucher vouchers that's specific to veterans. It's so much. I deal with it all day, every day, but it's a lot.
And we also have a connection to the Veterans Personnel Records in St. Louis. So if we have a veteran that needs a DD-214, and a DD-214 is like a birth certificate for a veteran, and that's when you really know who a veteran is. If you have an aged veteran in World War I, he's going to go in that wallet and pull out that DD-214. So that's important. So we could actually call up to St. Louis and get a veteran's DD-214 faxed to us, providing the veteran is in the room. And that's huge for housing.
oh, good. So what I hear is there's a lot of materials and resources for veterans. I guess to kind of maybe condense the question, if I am a veteran who has experienced some type of housing instability, how do I go about accessing this information that doesn't present another barrier for me? Is there one place particular I should go to? Is there a phone number? Is there a website? Is there some sort of resource document that you would refer me to so that I might be able to glean some of that information without going to multiple places?
I will refer you to Hussein. No, you got the Veterans Clinic, the outreach clinic over there on Linden Road. We refer to it as the CBOC. You got that one. Then they have an outreach worker, case manager that is always in the area. I think twice a week. They
CBOP,
from
like
yeah.
Mama Deloney or Mrs. E. Hill Deloney, CBOP or something
No,
different?
no, no,
No,
no,
no.
no.
It's
That's
it's
CBOP.
it's community based outreach clinic, outpatient clinic, not outreach, outpatient.
So if you have a veteran that needs services, the first place in Genesee County I would start is either at my brother's keeper. The number is 810-234-1163, or Veteran Services. They have a plethora of help down there with eligibility. If you're trying to get service connected, which means if you've been hurt in the military and has never applied for service connection, you can go down there and they will check your eligibility and ask you some questions and send an application up. The other thing that's important for veterans, and not too many veterans realize this, sometimes you are able to get your discharge up. Say if you, okay, Hussein, can you explain that? I
Yeah,
see you shaking
you
your
can
head.
get an upgrade from say you got a general discharge. You're eligible for an upgrade to an honorable discharge.
One time.
Yeah, one upgrade. If you got a like for certain programs, you have to have a certain kind of discharge. So if you have a other than honorable, which is not a dishonorable, they can up it to a general, which would make you eligible for a whole lot more than the other than honorable would.
And you have to have 2 years of service to receive health care for homeless veterans with a honorable or
At least a general.
at least the general and discharge. So those are very important things for veterans. And another thing, we have tons of veterans in Genesee County that will not reach out for these services. We have a guy in our shelter right now, did not want anything to do with the VA, came here because of the Richfield
Yeah.
housing problem, came to my brother's keeper, is receiving a HUD badge, and he really don't want to leave the shelter.
Yeah.
He likes it here, but we're going to move him into his own place soon. So it's a lot of things for veterans, and we'll be happy to have a conversation with anyone that calls 234-1163. That's my brother's keeper's main line.
234-1163, or just go find Hussein. Got it. All right, Katie, I feel like you were about to drop some knowledge on us or to chime in there. Was I right? Is my superpower right?
You know, Ashley is my partner in good trouble, and she could always feel what I'm about to say. What I was going to say, I was only going to offer that for our viewers, we're nearing the end. So if anyone has any comment, questions, right now we don't have any more. Now's your last chance. And while we wait to see if any of those come in, we've reserved our last few minutes of our legal lounge this week for Essence Wilson to tell us a bit about some of the developments that they have that could expand, hopefully, access to housing in our community. So Essence, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for the opportunity to address the audience today. Legal Services and the Center for Civil Justice are doing amazing work, as are all of the folks on the panel. So for those who are not familiar with Communities First, we are a nonprofit housing developer that started in Flint. We were founded by myself and co-founder Glenn Wilson. And when we started 10 years ago, we really had a strong desire to improve housing conditions, specifically for seniors in the Flint area. But that desire has grown, and now we provide a variety of types of housing for a diverse group of people. And that includes those experiencing homelessness, people with disabilities, veterans, and in all honesty, anybody else who's looking for quality housing options. And so we build and preserve multifamily buildings to ensure access to safe, affordable housing for all members of our community. And some of the developments may be familiar to you. So they include Oak Street, Swayze Court, Coolidge Park, Berkeley Place, Avon Park, Orchard Lane, and Georgia Manor, which is actually in construction right now. So that's really exciting that we were able to continue building and developing during COVID. And so most people would agree that access to housing where they can feel safe and have resources provided is important for everybody, no matter what their income is. And so as we're talking about barriers to housing, we're talking about housing, Fair Housing Month, it's unfortunate because we've realized that some people don't feel the same way. And I think housing discrimination can take many forms. And one that I want to talk just briefly about is NIMBYism. And so NIMBY, NIMBY, stands for Not in My Backyard. And it's basically this idea that some community members declare or feel that they don't want certain people in their neighborhood. And so as we're thinking about this as developers, we want to put housing in the best location for the person who's going to live there. So we want them to have access to transportation, to the grocery store, to a bank, to all kinds of amenities so that they can walk to and from the places that they need to get to, just in case they don't have transportation. And of course, being on the bus line so that they can get to other locations that may be a little further away. And there are just some people who have decided that they don't, feel that they want what they perceive to be certain types of people in their neighborhood. But honestly, who gives them that right? It's the Fair Housing Act of 1968 that prohibits discrimination concerning the sale, rental, and financing of housing based on, and there's a lot of protected classes, race, religion, national origin, sex, and it was also amended to include handicap and family status. And so some of the things that we have heard from people as we're doing development are absolutely unbelievable. Here are a couple of actual quotes of things that we've heard people say. So what kind of people are you bringing to my neighborhood? Well, I'm concerned about my property values. Well, why can't you put that development over there somewhere else? And on the surface, some of these questions can sound really innocent, but the underlying tone is one of discrimination. And it's imperative that we all continue to work together towards a common goal of dismantling racism, classism, discrimination, and addressing barriers to housing for people in our communities. It's my firm belief, it's the belief of Communities First, and I'm sure everyone that's on this panel, because of what you do on a daily basis, that everyone should have a place to live that they can be proud of, that provides comfort, and that they can afford to live in. And there are just some people that don't believe that, and it's agencies like Communities First, the Center for Civil Justice, Legal Services of Eastern Michigan, and My Brother's Keeper that are continually working to change that. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to address the audience and to share my thoughts, and for all of our community partners that are working together to address housing barriers.
Thank you so much, Essence. And I will say, we, of course, as a Fair Housing Center, we do testing in this community, and this is a great time at which, if you're someone who wants to be engaged in that civil rights enforcement arm of the agency in your community and make an impact that way, we provide training and stipends and gas for folks to do what's called fair housing testing, where we send essentially a mystery shopper out and seeing if folks are treated differently based on those protected class statuses that Essence was talking about. And so often now those things aren't as overt as they once were, but like you said, they definitely still exist. It's just sometimes harder for us to uncover them, and testing is a really great way that we're able to do that. So for those that are interested in testing, we'll have our incredible stage manager, Xander, shout out to her for all of her work behind the scenes, put in the bit.ly for our testing registration link. And Ashley, do you want to take us out?
I'm actually still reflecting on what Essence just shared. If you ever notice me like looking away or looking kind of blank, it's because I'm processing. So I don't think that there's too much more that I need to say into addition to that, and I don't want to clutter it. I will offer that on April the 23rd, we have our Legal Services of Eastern Michigan Fair Housing Conference to be hosted digitally. So Xander is also going to drop a link for you to register for that virtual conference. We have some phenomenal speakers, some really awesome subjects, discussing the intersectionality between equity and fair housing, disability rights, marijuana law, mindfulness and wellness, fair housing updates. So we're taking maybe a non-conventional approach to some very traditional subjects, and we hope that you'll join us. Additionally, we look forward to seeing you during our next Legal Lounge to take place on May 18th. Same place, same time, same hosts, different guests, same purpose, to bring some enlightenment, some positive energy, and some useful information to your timeline in DigiSpace and beyond. So thank you to each of you, to all of our panelists today who joined us and provided their expertise and phenomenal energy. Thank you to all of our viewers. We appreciate you for always showing up and offering us support this way. We hope to see you again next time on the Legal Services of Eastern Michigan Legal Lounge. Xander, take us out of here.